Hello, hello, and welcome. And the name of the game today is Pitch and Power. Pitch and Power. You know, viewer Ken Vincent has been bugging me to do a little bit of instrument flying, and I probably will at some point, but I've been taking some flight instruction, and first of all, I have to start with a disclaimer. What you're about to see is not flight instruction. I am not a CFI. And this is not a real airplane. So this, at best, is fake flight instruction. And what we're going to do is we are going to make it so that we lose a whole mess of our instruments here. Because I found that in my own experience, and I was talking to an instructor about this, in his experience, the hardest thing he now faces, and all instructors seem to face, is getting pilots to know their airplane and to look outside. And there are even special glasses you can buy. You know how they're IFR glasses that keep you from seeing the upper half of the picture, only the bottom half where the instruments are? Well, there are actually now at Sporties, you can get VFR goggles, and they are just the reverse. They are shaded in a way that you can see the outside, but you can't see the inside. So through the magic of X-Plane, we are going to fail a bunch of stuff. And actually, we're going to fail it in a way that isn't especially realistic. Failures are generally insidious. They generally crop up at odd times. They're certainly not planned. And mostly, depending on what systems fail, everything doesn't just all go kaput at once. But we're going to make them all go kaput at once. So we're not going to have airspeed. And this gets us in the famous situation of Air France 447. Basically, you're out over the South Atlantic. It's a nice, calm, quiet night. Well, actually, it wasn't a nice, calm, quiet night. It wasn't a very nice night. And you're tootling along, and all of a sudden, you have unreliable airspeed. And in the words of the great Karl Malden for American Express,
what'll you do? What will you do?
Well, what the nice pilots at Air France did was they forgot how to fly the plane, and they dropped it into the South Atlantic. And others have done that, and certainly a lot of private pilots have done it. And we're not even talking about flying accidentally into IMC, although in my little test flight for this, I screwed up my own weather. I ended up flying into IMC and managed to get out of it with power and with trim and with looking at the compass to see if it was moving one way or the other, and to see if the ball was sliding one way or the other, basically as a rough and tumble way of determining whether we had wings level, because we had no artificial horizon and no real horizon, so no real way to tell if wings were level. And in fact, what I had done was I'd accidentally stumbled into the situation that early pilots stumbled into before the artificial horizon, which is, oops, I'm in a cloud. How do I tell if I'm turning left, turning right, up or down? And the answer is, to some extent, you can't, but to a very limited and sometimes useful extent, you can. Are you turning one way or the other? Well, you can tell that. Are you rolling one way or another, or sliding one way or the other? And you can, to a limited extent with this, tell that. And finally, to make sure you were nose up or nose down, this is what we're going to be teaching, again, fake teaching. This time, we knew a power setting, and we knew a pitch, in this case, hands off and trimmed ever so slightly up, and we knew that that was going to get us at about 15 inches of manifold pressure at the weight we are, and in the condition we're in with the trim set the way it was, and I believe I put the gear down, it would get us a certain amount of sink rate. And we basically just relied on that until we dropped out of the clouds, because we couldn't know if we could climb out of it And we certainly couldn't know if, as we climb out of it, we could confidently keep wings level for long enough to get above it. Whereas I knew that at the very worst, what happened was I set the overcast for 10,000 feet, but through some keystroke combination, I turned on my active sky, and it set it back to what the conditions really are today, which are 1,500 feet. So I knew that I would break out sooner than I could climb out of it. So I descended out of it, keeping an eye on the compass, keeping an eye on the ball, keeping my hands light on the control and not getting a death grip on it, and knowing that we would be descending, even though I didn't know what altitude we were at, nor did I know what airspeed we were going. I knew that the combination of 15 inches, geared down, relatively neutral trim, and a light touch on the yoke would get me a predictable rate of descent at not too high a speed and not too low a speed either. And that meant that as long as I stayed reasonably close to not rolling into a spiral dive, I would probably survive the encounter, and I did. The reason why I didn't present that to you, well, it could be because I didn't survive and I'm just lying, but in reality what happened was I had a yoke profile here set up wrong, and when I went, that's not it right there, and when I went to demonstrate some stalls and things, I didn't have enough elevator authority to stall the airplane. And I thought, wow, something is terribly wrong here. And I thought maybe I'd done something weird. But I thought, well, gee, maybe I picked up some ice. But if I picked up some ice, it would be more eager to stall. But anyway, I racked my tiny little brain and couldn't really come up with an answer. So I hit reset and did that again. By the way, you deserve, if you didn't live through the 1970s, well, first of all, you might not know what a traveler's check is. A traveler's check is like something that banks or American Express sold, and they were for going to countries where you didn't know if they were going to take a credit card, you didn't know if they were going to take cash, and you didn't want to carry a lot of cash because you didn't want to get ripped off, because if somebody rips off your cash, you can't get it replaced. But if they rip off traveler's checks, supposedly, you would just call the nice folks at American Express, and they would like deliver it to you by microwave supersonic suppository. That's how quick they were. Before you knew it, it would be up the keister. But anyway, here you go. I have no idea what that means. But here is the sort of traveler's check commercial that was running when I was a teenager, or maybe a little bit younger here. And Karl Malden was a famous actor in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s too. He was in Patton, he was in Streets of San Francisco, and I mean, you'll see him you'll recognize him as soon as you see him. But here we go. This is the American Express commercial, and they only ran every 28 seconds at every sporting event for about 15 years.
You're robbed on vacation. You have no cash, no credit cards, nothing. What'll you do? What will you do?
Rely on American Express traveler's checks. If they're lost, you can get a full refund at over 60,000 places. American Express traveler's checks. Don't leave home without them.
First of all, it occurs to me that probably you're hearing too much of this. So let's, since I had to watch it every 38 seconds, you're going to have to watch it every 38 seconds too. So here we go. Nicely filmed, though.
You're robbed on vacation. You have no cash, no credit cards, nothing. What'll you do? What will you do?
Rely on American Express traveler's checks. If they're lost, you can get a full refund at over 60,000 places. American Express traveler's checks. Don't leave home without them.
And you know how I knew that he was an old guy when I was a young kid? He's the only guy on the planet in 1978 who was wearing a hat. Now these days I wear a hat. Every once in a while I wear a hat just like that, but I do not look as old as he does. And he wasn't even unbelievable. Well, yeah, I don't know. I was going to say he wasn't unbelievably old when he made this commercial, but I think he lived to be about 95, and he only died fairly recently, and this was in 1978, so he would have been pretty damn old. But anyway, what will we do? What will we do? Well, first of all, let's fail the stuff. And so the way you do that is going to edit failures, and let's go to instruments and primary. And now you can set it so that it fails when you reach an altitude after a certain amount of time. But what we're going to do is we're going to fail it. So no airspeed. We're going to ditch the artificial horizon because we're in visual conditions. So we'll just fail that. We'll keep the altimeter. I mean, you know, no need to go crazy on this. We'll fail that. And that should do it. Now, what's going to happen is we are going to start our takeoff roll, and you know how you say airspeed is alive? Well, airspeed is not going to be alive, and in that situation, in the real world, you most certainly would not continue flying, but we are going to continue flying. And you say, well, how can we do that? How can you do that? Because you're supposed to rotate at 60 or 65 or 70, and how are you going to know? You can't see it. Well, two ways. One is we're going to set our normal trim, which is just a little shy of neutral, and we know two things. We know that at a certain speed, I'm using a force feedback yoke, but you can also simulate this by, as you're rolling, giving a little test, this or that, so you can see whether it's got some authority to it. And we know that when we get to a certain speed, it is going to have more authority, it's going to firm up, and we're going to know at a certain point that it's going to be ready to go. We also know that at this trim setting and at the power setting we're going to use, which is takeoff power, at a certain point anyway, it is going to lift off the runway. So we don't really have to worry about it that much. We only have to know if it is not happening to abort the takeoff. And the way we really know that is because from experience we know that at our power and at our weight and at our trim setting and all the rest of it, that our takeoff run takes about 17 seconds, 16 seconds. So we're just gonna count. And at the end of that amount of time, if it feels like it can't get up in the air, we'll close the throttles and we'll stop, because we're on a 5,000-foot runway, so we have room. If we're on a short runway, we'd be screwed, but bear in mind, we wouldn't be doing this. And then we're going to climb, and you might wonder, well, how are we going to know to pitch for whatever speed? Well, we won't be able to pitch for the speed precisely, but we will have the power, and we will have the pitch. And we know what the picture looks like when we're taking off. And so we will simply plop a visual reference, the nose, or a rivet here, or something along the Lindbergh reference here, which is this little V, and we'll plunk that on a point on the horizon, and we'll simply carry on from there, because what else would you do? That's what you do when you're flying, even if you don't know it. I mean, your airplane doesn't care whether you know what it's doing, but if you observe what it does in the normal conditions you fly, you'll know what it should do. And then you will be a better pilot to that plane. So let's just get stopped here. I'm not going to do any run-ups because, hell, half our shit's broken. Doesn't matter. So we're basically just hooning around the skies here in a kind of controlled way. And again, this is fake flight lesson. Do we have a chronometer on this plane? I don't think we do. Do we? No. All right, so we'll use the Mississippi method. As they do in Mississippi, we'll count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. So we'll come up on the power here. 1 Mississippi, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, rotate, 16, 17, and my yoke is screwy again. I'm not getting any pull. Why is this happening to me? I've got no pull. I've got full back stick and I'm not going up. All right, well, the hell with trying to teach somebody to fly by feel if you don't have your feel. The hell is going on? Disconnect. Initialize. I can't imagine that the failures I set up make it impossible to fly. That, oh no. I think I know what's going on. This uses a bunch of different references from speed, and not only is this crap. All right, I know what's going on. Crap. All right, there is a way around it, but when I fail it, it's not sending an airspeed output to my goddamn yoke, and I will bet you dollars to donuts. Here, well, first, let's see if that fixed it. No, it didn't fix it, and I've got no authority. Now, oh, God, I hate this. All right, so here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to unfail the airspeed, even though that's precisely the thing I want to fail. And what we'll do is we'll set the view up something like this so you can't see the airspeed. Damn it! All right, that sucks. All right, first thing we'll do is we'll just set, and this is going to screw up all my references, of course. I don't want to see this. All right, well, there we go. We'll pretend we're like that. And we'll get this. I know this is what, I know this is what happened. All right, well, I will bet you any amount of money as soon as I restore that airspeed indicator, it is going to render my yoke useful again. Crap. All right, set up a new view here, and we'll call this camera 9, and we'll set this as Shift 4. That won't work. Let's call it 3. Oh, no. I see. We'll do view ID 12. All right, so view ID 12. Sorry about that, but if you got a Brunner yoke, I think this is going to be useful for you, because I think this is what it is, which means you can't go flying with failures set, because you're going to lose control of your aircraft as soon as you lose airspeed indication. Shit. All right, what did we say? View ID 12, so we have to go here now, and we have to go keyboard, and we have to do, let's see if key 3 gives us anything. Oh shit, can't do that. Let's do, I can do 3, why the hell not? This is, I don't need speed brakes on a Piper Arrow, so there we go. Plug-in provided, and we want X camera. Boy, you guys are learning all sorts of stuff along with me here, which is how to set up speed keys and things. So what did we say? View ID 12. View ID 12. We want to assign it to keyboard 3. All right. Oh, yeah. Is it not view ID 12? X camera, toggle control panel, view ID. Just shoot me now. View ID 12. Oh. This is killing me. Oh. Chosen the wrong thing. View ID 12. There we go. Boom, boom, done, and done. Okay. So I'm going to have to turn our airspeed indication back on. So edit failures, instruments. It almost doesn't matter what I have on or off right now because I'm not looking at them. But watch this. Pilot airspeed indicator. Always working. There we go. And that, I am going to bet any amount of money it's going to get our elevator authority back. Ah, look. Okay, there we go. All right, so pitch and power. I'm just adjusting my eyesight here. We're going to get our gear up. Right there. Get our gear up. Okay, our gear is up. And what's the sight picture look like when we're climbing? It's about like that. All right, now you might ask, well, how do we set our power? Well, we do have the indication, but for the moment, let's just use our eyes and ears and hands. So we know our throttle should be, about like there, about an inch back. I don't mean 1 manifold inch back, I mean literally an inch back. And now we're going to go by sound and by distance on our props, which is about right there. And we want to be at about 25 by 25, so let's see how we did. We're about 25 by 25, okay. So we know that much. Now, how do we know we're going fast enough? Well, I know that I've got a certain amount of aileron and pitch authority, so I know that's good. But what if I just let it drift up a little bit here? Well, now it's starting to feel sloppy, really messy. It's wallowing around. And in a second, look at my Lindbergh reference. There's the horizon. Oh, okay, well, there's the stall indicator. So let's ride it back up again. I'm right on the edge of it. So no, you got to know where that is, and you got to look at your Lindbergh reference now because you can't see the horizon except that way, and it wallows again. And the nose is coming up again. I have to be careful I don't climb into our clouds here. So now my reference is no longer here, my reference is there. And I don't think we're going to get much more in the way of climb. Okay, so now I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to pull again. And we're just barely sinking, and we'll pick up just a little speed, and that'll pop up the nose, and we'll stall again. So I'm maintaining my horizon now, looking here, not there. So let's do a turn. Well, if I do a turn now, watch what happens. I'm going to stall, so skip that. Or we could ride the stall, so watch. Bring the stall down, I'm going to bring some rudder in, I'm going to let the nose fall a little, and we'll just let the nose solve our problem for us. And we're using our reference, and we're transitioning our reference from here to here. Okay? We'll come around, and we're now at a nice altitude. And we're pretty much over the field here. And we'll retrim because now the nose wants to pop up, or in my case, the yoke is pushing on me. So now let's get into a cruise situation. So we'll bring it back to about 23 by 23. And I'm just doing this with my ears now and my fingers. Okay. Now we're in a cruise and we want to level out. So we push until the horizon is more or less where we know it should be. And it's more of a push than you think. And at this kind of power, on this kind of plane, it takes a push, takes a lot of trim, so let's trim back until the controls are fairly light in our hands. And now, just looking at the horizon here, it seem like we're more or less level. From experience, level of flight at the speed is about there. Maybe we're descending just a little bit. Let's see. Okay. We're on a mild climb that's not going to kill us, and we're not going to hit any obstacles, so there you go. All right, so now let's do a standard rate turn. And you say, well, how do I do a standard rate turn? I don't have my turn and bank indicator. Well, there are two ways to do it, and one correlates with the other. A standard rate turn is about 3 degrees per second, and a standard rate turn is going to be about a 45-degree little wedge here between some reference and the horizon. Now in this case we're kind of looking down a little bit, so my normal references aren't quite where they are, and we also know from experience we're going to have to pull a little bit, but not a lot. So now the other thing is that our compass precesses and sticks and dips depending on which way we're turning, so you have to account for that. And it is right now because we are turning north, so it simulates that dip, but basically that's about a standard rate turn. And you know from experience how much push on the rudder you need, so there you go. So now let's practice what we're going to do when we land. And we know from experience that landing requires about, descending at about 500 feet per minute. This is how I got out of my my little problem. Requires about 15 inches of manifold and relatively neutral trim and ever so slight nose down. So let's try that. So set 15 inches. Okay, right about there. And I'm pulling a little bit there. Let's trim to about neutral. Oh, a little bit nose down. It's a bit much. And let's get ourselves established in a descent here. Okay, I'm just sort of trimmed so that I'm not feeling too much in the way of forces. And instead of the horizon, we're in slow flight here. Let me just let the nose come down a bit more, trim down. All right, there we go. Instead of being horizon about here, the horizon is now about here. So we're just ever so slightly going down, and let's see what kind of performance this is. So we're stable. There we go. Let's see what we got. All right, we got about 300 feet per minute down. So we're close. Let's see what it really looks like at 500 feet per minute. Trim down a little bit more. I'd say right about there should do it. That's about 400 feet per minute. All right. I'm doing it backwards. I should do it to the number and then see what it looks like, but let's try it this way. There we go, right about there. Trimming, a little bit of a push, and there we go, 500 feet per minute. All right, so that's what it looks like, and what it feels like, well, let's see, what speed are we at? About 120, and we're clean, which means that if we trim nose up, put in gear and flaps, we can do that same 500 feet per minute, only dirty. So let's do that. Let's head out towards SFO here. See where our wind is coming from. All right, there's no real wind to speak of, so we can land whichever way we want. So let's get into a base leg here for the 10s. Go gear down. It's a little bit early to be doing that, but we're going to pretend we're flying an ILS approach here. Get one notch of flaps. Some people fly an ILS approach with no flaps. Trim a little bit nose up here, not too much. About that kind of pressure on the yoke. Let's see what we got. Okay, we're going down too much, so now we know that we should be more like, I'd say about like that. Because there's our horizon, there's our rivet. So let's trim and hold that. Let's see what that looks like. All right, about 600 feet per minute and about 80. And I don't know if you're a gambling person, but that's pretty much a decent speed to be landing this arrow. So now we know that if we pull up a little bit more, we're gonna almost level out, and we'll be going too slow. You can feel the things getting mushy, and if we let go and give it a push, we'll pick up a little bit of speed, and we'll end up going about 90. So no matter what we do now with the controls, if we don't screw around with just about anything else, we can use our other controls to get ourselves lined up vertically for this in a way that doesn't require us to look at anything. We just have to feel, and we have to know from experience what this does. So now I'm a little bit more nose down, and you can see that I picked up speed, but it's not a gross amount of speed, and that gets us another 500 feet per minute down, and we need it. But in a few minutes, we're going to need to get down even more, and we're going to need to not pick up speed. So what we'll do is we'll do a slip. So I'll go wings right, I'll hold left rudder, and I will slip us in. Oops, sorry. And again, I haven't touched the power, I haven't touched anything. I've just adjusted my controls, and now as you can see, we're going down at about 90, but now we're going down at 1,500 feet per minute. And we still need some more. I could roll off the power a little bit, but I like where this is, and the only requirement here is we have enough time to stabilize. We have enough time to slow down and arrest our sink, and at the moment we can do any of those things. So what I'm going to do is going to bring out the sink and let the nose come up. That's going to slow us down. And right about there we go. And now, as you can see, we're at about 85, and we're going down to about 500 feet per minute. And we're going to get a little high, so I'm going to roll off just a little power, and from here on in we're just going to do this by eye and ear. Now my reference to the horizon is a little bit screwy because I'm not used to this angle of view, but I'm going to transition to slow flight along the runway here. I'm going to let it float for a minute, and I'm going to roll out the power, and as I do, I'm going to bring up the pitch. And there we are. And that is pretty much a full flight from soup to nuts without any primary instruments. And also for you Brunner users, it's a good lesson. And I should probably talk to the folks at Brunner and see if they have any way of taking airspeed input without having the gauge be functional, because it renders it difficult to use as a training tool that way. And of course, because this is a fake flight, we get the replay here. And as you can see, let's just show us coming in here. As you'll be able to see, there ain't nothing at all unstable about this approach. Now you'll see here I'm in a slip to lose altitude, but that's something we planned. So you see we're slipping there, and now I'm slowly losing the slip as we come on profile. And pretty much doing this all by feel and experience. And it's so good, so inspiring that the vehicles have actually stopped on the 280 there, the better to watch us. I know it's a long runway, and so we're only using 1 notch of flaps. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to transition to slow flight. So we're going to extend our flare in essence just for the feel of it. And I actually recommend, that was sweet. I actually recommend that everybody do that if they can, because we're all used to this choreography of chop the throttle, how quickly, pull back, how quickly, oh my God, we're sinking. If you know that the airplane will come down at a certain rate, at a certain bunch of settings, you can just let it do what it does, and you only have to make the most minor of adjustments to go from a gentle descent to a round out to a gentle flare. And in a way, you're not doing it all at once. You've kind of done most of the work beforehand, if that makes any sense. You've kind of preset yourself for success. So let's do this. We obviously need the Hawaii 5-0 shot. That goes without saying. It's just a matter of form here. So let's just set it up here. This is not in the right place. Wait a minute, it's supposed to be the Hawaii 5-0 shot. Well, first of all, and look at that, that is perfectly stable. We're not making any huge adjustments. We're just making minor adjustments here and there. And there we go, we'll set it up right there. Oh, that's the Hawaii 5-0 shot. All right. So again, just look at this thing here. And now, there we are. Now you can see right there, that's where we start deciding that we're way too high. So you can see we're going to lose a lot of altitude quickly, and that's what that slip. But as we lose that slip in a second or two, you'll notice that we flatten out, and then we don't do a whole lot of up and down. You'll see that our position in the screen here, look at that, it just stays the same. Okay. And that's what a good approach should look like. It should almost look like you're painted onto the sky. Now there are going to be gusts, there's going to be little variables, little twitches and tweaks in your body, or a little turbulence here and there. But if you set things up right, it's not going to look much different from that, period. And we'll get one more from the cockpit here, only this time you'll see it with the instruments and you'll see what happens here. So look at this, look at that, and look at that. Okay, first, so there we are, we're making our turn. And as you can see, sorry about the rumble, apparently that goes with the territory, with the replay. That's a bug. See, our airspeed is barely changing and our rate of descent isn't changing. That's because our visual reference, we've kept it all nailed. Okay, and our power, you see, hasn't changed a bit. Everything is exactly where it should be. I didn't land with full props. I should have, but piss on that. All right, so now, look at that. Our rate of descent goes way up, but because we're presenting a lot more frontal area, a lot more drag, our airspeed doesn't go up. If we were to just push down the nose, then we would have had to lose some airspeed that we gained. And we don't want to do that. We want whatever we do to keep our total energy more or less the same. So this is energy management. So there we got this sharp rate of descent. We pick up a little bit of speed because notice we're pulling out of the slip, and so we get slipperier. It's odd it's called a slip when you're draggy as hell. And we're maintaining that picture. You see we get a little high, and so we just get a little bit of power out right there, just a tiny smidge. And now I keep the power in just a little bit here because I deliberately wanted to extend this flare so that the whole energy aspect and picture of it becomes apparent. And I've had a tough time with this. This has always been my bête noire, is a flare. But once you get used to the concept of slow flight down the runway, and that's all a landing is, then it becomes easier, because it's not an abrupt transition from something unknown, something known to something unknown. It's just a more minor transition from one phase of flight to another similar phase of flight, until you just creep out the throttle, and then there you are. And you have no choice but to land. Just like when you're at a certain power setting with a certain trim and a certain amount of pull, you have no choice but to fly if everything else is working. And once you figure out for your own particular plane what those combinations are, everything falls into place, and it becomes easier in the real world too. If real-world airplanes were as tough to fly as we seem to make them, as we do this in our fake planes, then airplanes would be falling out of the sky every 2.5 seconds, and they're not. So there are a lot of semi-competent pilots out there, and there aren't that many horrible accidents. So it can't be as hard as it seems in a sim. And I know it's hard with certain yokes and certain computers and certain lag and all sorts of stuff, but if you minimize your variables and you get used to the way things look when you're doing it right, it'll all become a lot easier, and you will never find yourself saying, "What will I do? What will I do?" So from the late great Karl Malden to the streets of San Francisco here, and from my humble Adobe, here's wishing you a good rest of the week, and I'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.